Hello friends, this is your friend back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto married Rias Gremory? Love, conviction, and destiny with Akeno Himehima, Asia Argento, Koneko Tuju, Xenovia Quarta, Irina Shido and the Shadow of Riser Phenex Part 2. The marriage is announced, the devil world reacts, and hidden feelings begin to surface. If you like this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Now, let's start. Chapter 3. Outrageous and Disgraceful. Sona Citri took immense satisfaction in her role as the president of the student council. That role was her pride and joy. The duties done that most would consider tedious and boring brought her joy like no other. As student council president, she had full authority and jurisdiction to confront, punish and lecture any student who weren't performing to the best of their ability. Being student council president meant she could help guide those lost and helpless students in forging a better future for themselves. It meant a lot to her to see every single student pass with flying colors, a rather admirable and unique goal for a devil, but that's one of the qualities that separated her from most of her kin. Hell, her ultimate dream was to start a school for lower and middle class devils so they could be more knowledgeable about rating games, culture, education. It might have not shown much through her icy, strict and disciplinary attitude, but she truly cared about the well-being and success of others, whether they be devils or humans or something else. Which is why yesterday's events were scandalously horrid and appalling for her. To see so many bright and well-mannered students throw away their education and act like idiotic brainless brutes hurt her. It was also a damage to her pride that she could not prevent and stop those students from being dim-witted. Over what were they being dim-witted about? Rias looping her arm around the elbow of a new student and dragging him inside. For almost all the students to go insane simply because of something as stupid as that. No, this was in plain terms, just unacceptable, and that's why everyone, minus those who stayed until they were dismissed, were going to be punished severely. The harshest of punishments falling on one Issei Hyodo, of course. It was only because of her mind manipulation ability that all devils possessed that she was able to prevent the reputation of this academy from being dragged through the mud. What if she didn't possess such an ability? Didn't all those students understand that attending top universities like Oxford or Harvard would be impossible with a damaged reputation? Did they not realize that attending universities or colleges in general would be quite difficult? All of them, especially Issei Hyodo. They all will be disciplined very, very thoroughly. This she vowed. But before anything, she will personally prevent the same circumstances from ever happening again by greeting and welcoming the new student while daring anyone to even glance at their direction. So livid that she was, she felt like she could whip the behind of every student who participated in yesterday's madness and add in her devil powers to boot. Which is why she, Sona Citri of the House of Citri, the younger sister of the Satan Leviathan and the president of the prestigious Kuo Academy's student council, was standing here at the gates, waiting to meet and welcome the one who unintentionally caused the riot 24 hours ago. So that is him. Though physically he looks strong and capable, I still find it hard to believe that this human managed to beat Rias in her peerage, a very impressive task for a human. Sona thought with a bit of awe as she studied the young man who came in with her childhood friend and stood before her. Hello. My name is Sona Shitori. It's a pleasure to meet you. I am the student council president. Feel free to address me as Sona Kaichu or just Kaichu. It's nice to meet you too. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Sorry about what happened yesterday, Naruto said sheepishly, though he quickly noticed how unlike yesterday, everyone seemed to not pay them any sort of attention at all. Talk about weird. Nothing to apologize for, Uzumaki-kun. If anything, it's these sorry and miserable lot who should be apologizing to you for chasing you and for causing a terrible first impression. Her voice, though quiet and low, seemed to reach the ears of all the students in the courtyard who deflated at her words. Turning her attention to her childhood friend for the first time this morning, Sona smiled and nodded. Rias. Sona, I'm a bit surprised to see you here first thing in the morning, Rias nodded back. I don't want a repeat of yesterday's incident, which is why I'm here. Inhaling deeply and pushing her glasses to the bridge of her nose, Sona turned around to look at the students responsible for giving her a headache. I want all of you to head to your classes. Now. Immediately and without any form of protest, all the students obeyed the student council president and headed to their classes, none daring to speak a word in risk of aggravating the already aggravated woman. Damn, that's impressive. Naruto thought, very amazed with how she commanded everyone and seemed graceful while doing it. Without glancing in their direction, Sona spoke up, Uzumaki-kun, Rias, come with me please. The shinobi and Gremory heiress followed the younger sister of the Satan Leviathan, a look of unease and discomfort decorating the Jinchuriki's features as he could feel the displeasure rolling off from the woman in front of him. He could tell that it wasn't aimed at him, but such knowledge didn't deter him from feeling this way. Rias, I'd like to punish your pawn. While everyone's behavior yesterday was atrocious, yes, it was your pawn who led everyone into chasing after you both. So she's a devil too, huh? Naruto thought, mildly surprised. It would make sense considering how cordial yet friendly the two women seemed to one another. Now Sona, you know that as his king, it is my right to punish Issei-kun for his actions. Rest assured though that I will punish him for what he participated in. I myself am appalled by what he did. Stopping abruptly, Sona turned around to grace her childhood friend with the look, really, you can't fault me for doubting you, Rias, but you are kind, too kind even at times. Can I really trust you to handle the punishment for Hyodo? You certainly can, Sona. I'll punish Issei so hard that the first thing he'll do this morning before lunch break is apologize to both you and Naruto-kun. Yeah, I just don't see that weirdo saying sorry to me. He actually came up to me and said sorry. To say Naruto was surprised was an understatement. He genuinely thought Issei Hyodo would rather eat bleach than to talk, much less apologize to him. He hardly knew the fella, but from the first moment they met till now, it only seemed that the harem-yearning man disliked and barely tolerated him. Can you repeat that again? I'm not sure I heard you right. I said I'm sorry. I know I've been a jerk lately and I hope we can start over, Issei stated glumly. Issei, despite his perverted tendencies, was actually a man who had his heart in the right place. Having felt that he was very weak in his recent ordeal with Rainer and the fallen angels, and as a teenager with insecurities, to have to witness a guy the same age as him just utterly demolish him and the other peerage members in a fight, it was humiliating and a miserable experience. It didn't help that the guy was handsome and effortlessly captured the attention of both Rias and Akeno. To have to interact with someone that fortunate in luck was a difficult pill to swallow, but one he had to nonetheless in order to both avoid the spanking delivered by his king and to avoid his guilty consciousness. Yeah, I don't mind starting over. My name's Naruto Uzumaki. I'm Issei Hyodo, nice to meet ya. All around the unique duo in the hallway were students who were keenly observing and now whispering harshly to one another, their gossip and eccentric comments easily being heard by the blonde and devil. What is that pervert doing now? Naruto-sama, why are you talking to that freak? Don't tell me they just became friends. The perverted libido should just die. Get away, Naruto-sama, that pervert is contagious. Naruto watched as a vein appeared in Issei's forehead, each comment just further enlarging the blood vessel. The last remark about him being contagious is what finally blew Issei over the edge. Shut up all of you, Issei bellowed, putting his impressive set of lungs to use, startling and terrifying everyone minus the shinobi. Make funny of me now, but know this, all you guys will wish you were half as cool as me, and as for you ladies, you all will beg to join my harem in the future and I won't let any of you in ever. Silence, pure silence reigned in the crowded and student-littered hallway. None spoke as each of them silently contemplated the leader of the perverted trio's declaration. Suddenly one of the female students' face contorted in fury, then an additional 2 faces, then 8, and then all at once. If it wasn't the feel of their bloodlust or the rage that clouded their eyes, it follows that their wrath-induced screams was what had Issei turning tail and sprinting away from the angered and hostile woman. Naruto watched as the masses of students chased after Issei Hyodo. Feeling nostalgia and sadness as Issei's quirks reminded him of his godfather, both were very shameless, both had an unhealthy amount of appreciation for women, and yet that's where the similarities ended from what he knew so far. Jiraiya, though he claimed to be a super pervert, was more of an honorable man than most people gave him credit for. In a world full of bloodshed and hatred, he was one of the few who aspired to achieving world peace. He cherished and loved people like they were his own family. And as he recently found out from his fellow disciples, Jiraiya stayed behind in order to look after and care for 3 orphans he didn't even know. Such actions would have surprised many who claimed to know Jiraiya but never truly knew him. He had a heart of gold underneath that pervy and lewd exterior. Taking a deep breath to steady himself, his emotions spiking at the thought of his dead godfather, he took several more breaths to calm his heart, feeling great agony at the loss of his father figure. Closing his eyes in concentration, Naruto pushed back the feeling of loss and pain, locking those emotions deep inside his soul. A full minute passed before Naruto finally felt centered and balanced, not at pain but not completely at peace within himself. Opening his eyes, the shinobi jumped back as his eyes found a deep set of concerned yet beautiful lavender orbs just a few inches away from his face. "Are you okay?" Akeno asked softly, the worry in her eyes quite obvious for the Jinchuriki to spot and pick up. Right after the first period had ended, Akeno made it her mission to look for the man who beat her and everyone else, looking forward to spending more time with him and to give him the promised tour of the school. She had nothing for the second period, it was vacant so as to give her time to study usually, but it presented her with the best opportunity to help out the cutie pie, especially when she knew that he had nothing as well since she familiarized herself with his schedule. Some might say that it was a little creepy, but in her defense, she only wanted to help him since he was so unfamiliar with not just the school but also the town itself. That was her thought process, but such thoughts wouldn't help her when they'd notice the red hue in her cheeks. Having arrived just in time to hear Issei's stupendously outrageous yet hilarious declaration. It took everything in Akeno not to collapse and dissolve into uncontrollable fits of laughter, her lips trembling with heavy exertion to stop the giggles that wanted to come out. She managed to suppress the laugh but not her amused smile. Her smile slowly faded as she took notice of Naruto's shaky breaths, the amusement in her eyes transitioning into a worried look as his eyes closed for what seemed like forever. Akeno felt the urge to hug the blonde, an instinct that she didn't bother trying to quell as she crept closer to the clearly at pain blonde. Standing right there before him, Akeno started to move her arms to wrap them around Naruto and abruptly returned them to their natural place as the shinobi finally opened his eyes. An almost unnoticeable blush grew on her face, feeling great embarrassment at her failed attempt to physically comfort him. Still, despite her embarrassment, she truly wanted to know if he was alright or not. "Don't worry about me, Akeno, I'm made of strong stuff." Naruto replied back with a small grin, the grin melting away at the frown that formed in Akeno's breathtaking visage. "Naruto-kun, just know that whatever it is that hurts you, you can talk to me about it," she told him quietly, internally disappointed at his lack of confession. "Thank you, Akeno-chan, it goes without saying, but if you need someone to talk to as well, I'm here. Kinda pointless to offer since you have Rias and the rest, but yeah, I'm around to help," Naruto stated sheepishly. The lingering disappointment disappeared at his words and she gave him a small smile. Grabbing his hand, Akeno giggled lightly at his confused expression. "Don't tell me you already forgot about the school tour, cutie pie. Not that I'm unhappy about you showing me around, but don't you have class, Akeno-chan?" "For the first semester, I have no classes on second period, and that's the same case for you. Now let me show you everything the school has to offer," she said while tugging him to her. The shinobi offered no resistance and allowed her to drag him around, feeling very much like a doll played with by a 5-year-old, incapable of resisting, just used and played with until discarded, not that he felt that Akeno would just use and then discard him. Being deep in thought as he was, Naruto failed to catch the livid and heartbroken expressions that adorned the faces of the male population, the feelings of ire and sorrow that originated from their souls caused by an unsuspecting shinobi. Not Akeno though, she easily picked up on the thoughts and jealousy of the male student, a small flush on her face at the assumption made by her fellow students. She did nothing to dissuade the male population from thinking that they were a couple. The only thing that prevented the students from forming another riot to punish and chase the blonde out of the school, was the predatory and menacing glint found in the student council president's eyes back at the assembly. As such, they could do not but watch as one of the beautiful Oni-samas of the school, held hands with that annoyingly handsome blonde and took him away from the female secluded hallway. The fear in their hearts instilled by the little sister of the Satan Leviathan, prevented them from clobbering the blonde and winning the heart of the mesmerizing Akeno Himehime. "What are you all doing here? Go to your classes now," roared Tsubaki, the vice president of the student council and the right hand and queen of Sona Citri. That snapped the male population out of their depressed and heartbroken state. Immediately they all dispersed and scattered, none willing to risk the ire of the normally stoic vice president. "Where are you taking me, Akeno-chan?" Naruto asked curiously. "Quite a few places, cutie pie. There's the gymnasium, the cafeteria, where your other classes are at, the library, the clubs at school, the locker room and my favorite spot at the school. Favorite spot? Akeno nodded and smiled lightly at him. You'll see, in fact that will be our first destination. Kuo Academy is regarded as the finest school in all of Japan for a reason. That's one of the major reasons as to why Sona-chan is so furious with everyone, because yesterday's debacle almost cost the school its reputation. Akeno said with a giggle. I am completely innocent in this. I still don't understand why I had an army of nutcases chasing me out of the school. Only thing I do know is that Issei was the one leading them. How do I say this without sounding arrogant or bratty? Akeno's mind was blank. Nothing came to mind in how to describe their position without coming off as conceited and shallow. Sighing at her failure, the Thunder Priestess just tried her best not to give a bad impression. The only thing I can say is that everyone in school, like everyone has a lot of appreciation for both me and Rias-chan. There is also appreciation directed at Kiba-kun, Koneko-chan and Asia-chan. There is also Sona-chan and the student council. But out of everyone in school, there is no one more loved than me and Rias-chan. They love us like a lot, to the point where we most of the time stay in the orc club just to avoid our eccentric and bizarre fanboys and fangirls. When you say everyone, even the teachers and staff. Naruto asked owlishly. Yes, me and Rias-chan got used to it a long time ago. Akeno stated simply, attending the same academy and receiving the same daily treatment for 2 whole years, it numbed a person to the affection and the obsessive devotion that everybody directed at her. It was kinda sad to get used to something like this, but life was different for every soul. Well, that's very creepy, Datbeo. Naruto instantly cursed himself for the stupid tick mark. What a way to look unmanly. Datbeo. That's so cute, Akeno gushed teasingly. Dramatically hugging the life out of him, making sure that the blonde could feel her blessed and well-endowed attributes. Mission accomplished, Akeno thought with a small lustful grin, having easily noted the pink hue gracing the shinobi's face. I'm not cute. I'm a man and men aren't cute, they're badass. Naruto exclaimed loudly, trying not to show any outward reaction at the feel of the voluptuous woman soft pressed against his chest. The Thunder Priestess snorted and laughed softly at the shinobi's reaction. I think a man can be both cute and manly, besides you didn't have any problems with me calling you cutie pie, you don't, right? Akeno asked him while giving him the look. Poor Naruto looked her in the eye, the perfect response in his head, just waiting to be delivered, just waiting to be said and all but forgotten as he peered into the quivering and moisture-filled eyes of one of the most sensual and beautiful woman he's ever had the pleasure of seeing. Her heart-capturing features easily influencing and taking a hold of Naruto's being. What was he going to say to this woman? Naruto wasn't one to be at a loss of words, quite the opposite really, but when faced with shaky lips, unsteady sniffles and warm tears plastered on the mesmerizing face of an angel, it could be pardoned that Naruto forgot exactly what he had in mind. I don't mind, Akeno-chan. No sooner did his words reach her ears, a large smile graced her face. You make me so happy, cutie pie, so happy that I could eat you up. Naruto instantly blushed crimson at Akeno's lewd words, yet as embarrassed as he was, he couldn't deny that he was actually enjoying the attention. Akeno laughed at the embarrassment that this handsome young man felt. It just didn't make any sense how he reacted. When men are so powerful, especially at a young age, they're surrounded by the company of so many women who happily flaunt their body in hopes of catching a powerful man's attention. Because of how often the strong would be surrounded by attractive-looking women with no sense of normalcy, the men would grow immune to the woman's shameless display and indecency, so much that in some cases a woman could be and yet the powerful would not be fazed in any way. To see Naruto, someone whom she found out the hard way was really strong, it perplexed her as by all rights someone of such a standing of strength shouldn't be that embarrassed by her forwardness, and yet he was. It was both really cute and just so endearing. Come, cutie pie, I really want to show you my favorite spot in the academy. Is it really that good of a spot? Naruto questioned curiously. Akeno simply smiled at him and let go of him, mentally pleased that he didn't have any problem with their long hug. You'll see, come follow me. She headed towards the door leading towards the staircase, the blonde right behind her and ever so curious. Curiosity was replaced by shock and a little shameful excitement as Akeno walked on a flight of stairs, her long and thick milky thighs at eye level with the blonde, Naruto looked away for a few seconds, mentally admonishing himself for looking at his friend in such a way. Worse was that said friend was the one who healed him, and this was how he repaid her. Despite the internal self-directed reprimanding, Naruto looked back to admire her beautiful and meaty legs, unable to resist the bewitchingly hot woman and her shapely body. Each time Akeno raised a lower limb and brought it down on the next stepping stone, Naruto witnessed her girthy and thick thighs jiggling enticingly. In his entire life, he's met many women, kunoichi in particular, who were blessed with beautiful forms and physiques. The training trip with his godfather was quite educational, and Naruto laid eyes on many a woman who saw no issue with being bare before them, some of them even trying to entice him to join them in some passionate lovemaking. One in particular was blessed with large thunder thighs that led up to a really nice butt. That woman was quite audacious, but audacious or not, she was hot. Many of the women he met were beauties, but they had nothing on Akeno. Just looking at the creamy, soft and doughy thighs that this woman possessed had his mouth watering a little bit. Naruto felt his pulse quicken as he decided to take a quick upskirt peek and, whoa. Enjoying the view, cutie pie, her melodic voice snapped him out of his thoughts, and Naruto promptly blushed as he gazed at the knowing and amused eyes of the Thunder Priestess. Sorry, I didn't mean to look, but I kinda did, Naruto stated sheepishly, feeling very awkward at his predicament. No doubt his pervy godfather was laughing in his grave at this. Akeno felt her lips curl into a delightful smile and, without any impulse control, said the first that came in her mind. I don't mind if you want to look, cutie pie. Huh, really? Naruto asked, shocked and stunned. Women didn't usually react like this. I have no problem if it's you, Akeno stated teasingly, shaking her hips just a little to draw attention to her fat rear. Naruto's eyes quickly closed in embarrassment, his face still colored crimson from both the embarrassment and the view. I appreciate the offer, but I won't be looking at your Naruto drawled out awkwardly, not sure how to say the word. My big butt, Akeno helpfully supplied, internally displeased yet amused by his shyness. Yes, can we please talk about something else now? Naruto pleaded, the tips of his ears starting to steam from how hot his face felt. I don't know, cutie pie, I think a lot of people including dear Ise-kun would happily enjoy the view and wouldn't want to talk about something else. There's a reason I'm calling him hentai-kun. Akeno-chan, the guy is just downright obsessed. I've met many perverted people in my life, quite a few who I was close to actually, but they all had restraints or other really good qualities. Did you know that before I saw you in the hallway, Issei proclaimed to all the girls that he will become harem king, and won't allow any of them to join in the future? Who the hell does that, I wonder? Naruto asked sarcastically. Akeno let out a large bark of laughter at the memory. She tried to stop laughing, but just thinking about it along with how Naruto phrased his question so sarcastically had Akeno fumbling to control her nerves. I don't know, but pffts, you have to admit it was pretty funny, Akeno said between gusts of laughter, stopping altogether to grip the handrail as she wheezed at the funny memory. Naruto tried and failed to suppress a smile as he heard her laugh. He couldn't blame her too much at the reaction, as Issei's stupendous declaration would have had him laughing too if it didn't hit too close to home. Excuse me, I do believe that you promised to show me your favorite spot in the school. Let's try our best not to laugh at hentai-kun's expense any longer. Naruto joked offhandedly. Akeno nodded with tears in her eyes. She struggled to contain her laughter but was able to do so after a few seconds of exertion and focus. We're pretty close now. Come, you'll really like it, Naruto-kun. She let go of the rails and headed up with more vigor than before. Naruto walked alongside her this time, trying his utter best to restrain his inner Jiraiya and be a non-pervy shinobi. The unusual but attractive duo made it to the top floor, standing right before an oddly ominous and large door that just omitted a sense of dread and creepiness. That didn't stop one Akeno Himehime as she stepped forward and pushed past the now open door. Naruto followed right behind the bubbly and attractive woman. He was grateful he followed her. They stood on the rooftop of the school where they were afforded with a beautiful view of everything in their vicinity. As a sage, even if just recently, Naruto could tell that this place right here just screamed serene and quiet. In here one was afforded with the view of students just relaxing and hanging out and chatting with beloved friends. One could see the various trees, the ponds and the forest, a good view of the sun and how it illuminated everything. Truly was this spot a goldmine for when someone wanted to meditate. I'm really glad I followed you here, This place is just beautiful, Naruto murmured softly as he walked up to her, standing alongside her as they viewed the courtyard where the students were going about their mundane day doing mundane things. Trust me, it's a lot better at sunset or at night, that's when this place really, really shines. Thank you for showing this place to me, Naruto said kindly, turning his body towards her and giving her a small Uzumaki grin. It was no problem at all, Naruto-kun. I enjoy coming here whenever I can. I'm enjoying it a lot more with you around though, so maybe you should join me every time I come here. Akeno proposed playfully. Well, when you put it like that, how can I say no? Akeno giggled and Naruto joined her as he chuckled at their newfound and odd friendship. The underworld, Lucifer's palace. If one had to use 3 words to describe the eyes of one Graphia Luciphage, the first words to come to mind would be freezing, terrifying and beautiful. Her hypnotic gaze seemed to draw one in, like a fish being caught and reeled in by the fisherman. The moment one's gaze landed on Graphia's pair of silver pearls, they could not look away, as either they were too hypnotized by her enthralling beauty, or were struck with fear as they noticed the sheer coldness that lay in her predatorial eyes. Either way, such attributes only helped strengthen the reputation that Graphia built as the Ice Queen of Cerzek Lucifer. One would think that Graphia would be happy with the life she lived. She was powerful, famous, filthy rich, and on top of all that, she was recognized as one of the most beautiful women in all of the supernatural world. In the eyes of most humans or devils or other supernatural beings, Graphia had it all. It was only natural of them to think that the Queen of Annihilation was a woman with a happy life. They could not be more wrong. Graphia did indeed possess all that was mentioned, but what she did not possess was the love of a soulmate. A common misconception in the supernatural world was that both Graphia and Cerzek were married, that they fell in love in the Civil War and got married afterwards once the war ended. If only the stories were true. The truth of the matter was that Graphia and Cerzek had indeed fallen in love. Their love was strong, it was bright, and it burned with the warmth of 1,000 suns. That's how it felt for the beautiful silver-haired woman. And for some time it felt that way for Cerzek too. He loved Graphia passionately, and all was well until he met a woman named Sayla. She caught his eye when he witnessed her show compassion to a 5-year-old fallen angel. So awestruck by the kindness he witnessed, Cerzek couldn't help but approach her, needing to find out just who exactly was this woman. Approach her he did, and they would soon become close friends that would spend more time with one another than what was deemed appropriate, and before Cerzek knew it, he was heavily in love with Sayla. Sure, Sayla wasn't as remotely gorgeous as Graphia or as powerful, but her kind heart and melodious soul lulled Cerzek to her like a moth to a flame. And as Cerzek happily found out, she too shared a warm, passionate love for him as well, but she wouldn't act on that love until Cerzek put an end to his relationship to Graphia. A consequence of being titled as a Satan was that he was restricted to only one wife. It effectively came down to a single choice: Graphia or Sayla. The gorgeous queen with a head of pearl-colored hair, the very same who abandoned her kin to join his side in the Civil War, or the woman with a heart of gold that would feed and clothe and care for a 5-year-old fallen angel when hardly any devil would. It was a hard choice to make. Now faced with such a decision, Sirich's heart thumped with guilt as he thought of Graphia's sacrifice and all she had ever done for him. Even if one ignored all that she has abandoned and renounced to be with him, how does one approach a woman who loves them and explains that you no longer want her because your heart now belongs to another? Cerzek wasn't sure, and he wasn't too enthusiastic to find out. His feelings were understandable as he was rewarded with the most stinging slap he had ever received in his entire life. A slap that was both physical and emotional, with the emotional being extra biting as he beheld the tears that were present in her eyes. The way her shoulders shook with such sorrow, and the way she barely held herself from crumbling at the pain and humiliation. He truly hurt her, and any attempt to comfort her would result in vicious and aggressive attacks meant to maim or even kill him if he dared to speak a single word of comfort or to hug her to help with the agony. As such, Cerzek left the cold and heartbroken woman to weep on her own. His heart heavy with guilt as her sobs grew ever so louder with each step he took away from her. Fortunately, his mother happened to run into him by chance, and once aware of the situation, didn't waste any time rushing to comfort Graphia. The shame and regret that he felt and the pain he caused Graphia caused him to seek out Sayla, the same woman who would 2 to 3 years later would in secret become his wife as Cerzek married her. Not everyone was so accepting of this relationship at first. His parents for one were against his choices from the beginning. It was only a year later that he would finally earn their approval as they slowly grew to like then love Sayla as one of their own. Grafia on the other hand, she eventually forgave him and was even so kind as to help cover his marriage with Sayla, but the coldness that greeted him whenever he stared into her alluringly silver eyes, the coldness in her eyes whenever she stared at him never faded away. Fortunately, Grafia didn't grow resentful as she spent more years in the Gremory estate. She came to love Rias as her little sister, came to love Lady Gremory as her mother, she even grew to love Sayla and Milikas as a sister and nephew. But despite being surrounded and being part of a family, she couldn't help but yearn to have a man's love. The closest she had ever gotten to that was with Czerżek, and that was more than 100 of years ago. Grafia just wanted to have the love of a soulmate, to have adorable children of her own to look after and care for. Each year she went without experiencing that dream only made her feel more bitter, more detached, and slowly losing the will to truly live her life. That was the thoughts and torment of the strongest queen as she sat at her king-sized bed and laid there, the sheer space in the vast bed mocking her and making her feel more alone than ever. She contemplated the last few decades spent here and thought about everyone who she grew to care and love for. Her thoughts went towards Czerżek and her heart grew cold as she thought of how he handed his heart to Sayla. Even after 100 years she still couldn't help but wish that Czerżek was with her here, in this bed. Grafia felt the warm tears on her face. She tried to control her feelings, but the loneliness felt the past 100 years couldn't be suppressed. It cried out to be released in some form, and Grafia wept at her loveless and marriageless life. Chapter 4. A frown grew at Rias's pristine visage as she read the letter for what seemed like the 100th time now, a letter with the initials and signature of her father Rias Gremory. The contents of the letter were most displeasing to Rias as she contemplated the piece of information received. Damn you, Riser, bad enough that you're practically forcing me into this marriage, but now you're trying to push us to get married now. When we already agreed to solve this once I was done with university, damn you, Rias thought angrily. Truly it seemed like she just couldn't catch a break. Her day was entirely ruined, no thanks to that belligerent pig and her beloved father. She read the letter one last time, her form encased in her signature power of destruction as she grew even more wrathful at the contents of the letter. Even more displeasing was that Riser was supposed to arrive tomorrow to see her in her club. She had just ran out of time with getting rid of this contract. She needed immediate solutions to get out of this shackling and unwanted marriage, but her only two options were either a rating game, an option that wasn't very favorable for her. The other option was being sullied with another man's seed, and there were no guarantees with that option that it would annul the contract. Riser might not even care that she would be spoiled goods, as people would see it. Besides, she didn't have many men to choose from. Kiba was too respectful and only had eyes for Tsubaki. Issei could work, but truth be honest, she'd rather not give her virginity to her pawn. That left only Naruto-kun, but doing it with him meant that he might not respect her as a woman after the ordeal. She does plan to pursue a relationship with him once she's done with Riser and the stupid marriage contract. Choosing Naruto meant that she might forever lose his respect and admiration. That was of course not mentioning that it will be her first time. It was supposed to be with someone special, right? Sex was supposed to be a union caused by love or lust, yes. Definitely not a union caused by desperation. Snap out of it, Rias. None of this will matter if I'm married to Riser. I will get out of this accursed marriage one way or another, the redhead thought determinedly, getting up while simultaneously crumbling the letter in her hand. Yet despite her newfound determination, Rias couldn't help but be saddened at the recent turn of events and what she had to do. Why do you do this to me, father? Is it wrong that I just want to be like a normal teenage girl with no shackles and to just have fun and meet boys I like? Is it really that wrong? Rias felt the beginning of tears building in the corner of her eyes. She wiped at them and sniffled, but her heart broke at the circumstances put in place by her parents. Forgive me, Naruto-kun, Rias uttered sadly, her blue eyes alight with grief and bits of shame for what she had planned. It was nighttime when Naruto finally returned home to his and Rias's shared residence. Having spent most of the day either learning in school, hanging out with Akeno, or training, Naruto felt like he was owed a date with his bed. Of course, being on a date entailed that he had to shower and smell good and not reek of sweat. One hot shower later and Naruto was happily nuzzling his face on the soft and comfy pillow. The way his comfy cushion just wrapped his face in softness was tugging him to blissful sleep. He was looking forward to it. You don't always get what you want, unfortunately. Naruto came to that startling realization as he heard Rias knock on his door. Getting up sullenly while mentally crying at his luck and fortune, the shinobi trudged towards the door where on the other side a mesmerizing redhead lay waiting for him. Hey Rias-chan, you just ruined my beauty. Is everything okay? Naruto's cheerful disposition faded away into a concerned outlook as he gazed at a set of watery and heart-tugging aquamarine orbs. Hey, what's wrong? Naruto asked softly, wrapping his strong arms around Rias's more delicate and fragile frame. Poor Rias leapt into his arms and hugged him back desperately, trying to submerge her existence into Naruto's warm and consoling hug. He looked down worriedly just as she looked up, deep ocean blue meeting soft vulnerable turquoise. Naruto-kun, Rias called out slowly. Yes, Rias-chan, he responded just as slow and soft but his tone belaying confidence and strength. Please don't think bad of me for what I'm going to ask of you, she pleaded a bit, nervously twirling a strand of her hair. I won't, but what do you need from me? I'll try my best to help you, he assured her confidently. Internally curious but wary of what help she was asking him precisely for. Had he been 3 years younger, he would have immediately offered his help without knowing what he was getting into. Fortunately he grew from that naivety. It didn't mean that he was immune to the warm tears of a kind young woman like Rias. Rias said, her eyes darting to look at everything but at him, feeling extreme embarrassment and self-conscious at what she just said. Huh? Naruto was dumbfounded. Are you really gonna make me say it again? Rias asked with even more unease than before, her cheeks flushing even more crimson. No, I heard you the first time, you just surprised me is all. Rias-chan, where is this coming from? Naruto questioned her gently, cupping her small hands with his big ones. Maybe I just really want you to make love to me, Naruto-kun. Her usual bright and beautiful smile didn't reach her eyes. Naruto couldn't help but frown at the sight. Rias, what's going on? He brought her over to the end of his bed where they sat and he wrapped her in a side hug. You can talk to me, what's the issue that's making you act like this? I can tell just by the look on your face that you're very sad. Naruto tried to console her, his heart bleeding with worry for the unusually sullen and discouraged girl. It doesn't matter, Naruto-kun, just make me a woman already. She got off the bed, causing the blonde to drop his arm, and Rias grabbed his shoulders, pushing him gently till he lay on his back with her straddling his stomach area. Only now did the shinobi catch on that Rias was wearing a flimsy purple see-through nightgown, the fabric failing entirely in its purpose of covering Rias's beautiful and curvaceous form. Large, milky, practically out there and jiggling. It took a lot of willpower and determination, but Naruto forced himself not to blush, trying his utmost best to not look down and ogle a clearly in need of help friend. Rias-chan, stop. It's obvious that something is going on, talk to me. Naruto pleaded as he lifted the redhead off him, eliciting a squeak from the heiress as he stood up and placed her on the floor, crossing his arms and waiting for an explanation. I'm sorry that I came to you like this, but it was the only thing I could think of to escape this forced marriage, to escape from Phenex. I know it's not fair to you and I'm sorry, Naruto-kun, but I didn't have much of a choice. Hey, I'm not angry, Rias-chan, I am a little disappointed, Naruto trailed off, seeing her wince. But I know that you have your heart in the right place, so don't worry about this, I forgive you. Naruto consoled her. Now what's our game plan? What options do we have so far in regards to saving you from this Phenex? Tell me everything, Naruto demanded. Rias looked shocked at his use of "we." The shock faded away and Rias felt a bit more better and at ease to have Naruto by her side. Tell him. She did as she explained everything from her father's hands in the contract to how she felt in all of this, the view that the underworld society had about it. All this was information Naruto was soaking up patiently, his features twisting slightly at the thought of Rias's parents. It would be quite accurate to say that everyone in the underworld, be it my parents or the Phenex clan or the Elder Council, they all want this marriage to happen, each have their reasons, but I'm the one who is losing the freedom from this affair. Rias explained sullenly. Rias, Naruto called out softly. Said girl looked at him silently, waiting to hear what he had to say about all of this. Placing his hand on her delicate shoulder, he said the only thing that came to his mind. I promise that you won't be married to Riser or to any other douchebag who you don't want to marry. Naruto vowed to her, unveiling the resolve and confidence in his eyes to the silently observing redhead. Slowly, the blank expression on Rias's face faded away as she smiled gratefully at him. Thank you, Nar. A blue teleportation circle formed in the middle of the room. What followed next was the voluptuous form of a silver-haired woman garbed in a French-made attire with piercing gray eyes glaring at the blonde. Rias-sama, get away from this trash. Grafia demanded frostily, her posture rigid and tense as she took note of the scantily clad heiress standing just mere centimeters away from the muscular blonde whom her little sister figure was no doubt planning to lay with tonight. Naruto's eyes hardened as he glared at this woman, the audacity of her to come into his room uninvited, demand something from Rias and insult him. He opened his mouth to let her know exactly his thoughts and got cut off by Rias before he could say anything, who immediately leapt to his defense. Grafia, what do you think you're doing? You have no right to just come barging in like this, and furthermore, Naruto-kun is not trash. I've come here to stop you from making a terrible mistake, though I did expect you to be in your pawn's residence, so you can imagine my surprise when I learned that you're housing a human and planning to be intimate with said human. Grafia stated stoically, her eyes trained on the blonde who glared back. Rias frowned heavily at her brother's queen, most displeased with her actions. That same human who you were insulting is the same one who turned down my advances and is the very same who's actually trying to help me with this stupid marriage. No matter what role he played tonight, it doesn't matter. Rias-sama, your presence is required as issued by your parents, Lord and Lady Gremory. Grafia announced, walking up to her little sister figure while materializing a full and concealing coat from her hand. The strongest queen wrapped the coat around the redhead's frame once she was in hugging distance, her movements gentle and pleasant despite the rigidness that still lay within her form. I don't know who you are, but you're clearly precious to Rias and vice versa. Why are you not helping her? Naruto questioned her, his confused but firm blue eyes locked on icy gray. One of the many skills imparted to him thanks to his godfather was reading body language. The blonde wasn't a master of the art of body reading, but even a novice could see just how much Grafia conveyed her care through her soft and tender ministration to Rias. Because my hands are tied in this, my position as both a maid of the House of Gremory and as Queen of Lucifer ensures that I can't interfere in this contract. I simply have no say in the matter. Grafia replied stoically, walking back to the center of the room and forming another magic circle. Naruto said nothing. What was there to say? Clearly the odds were stacked against Rias in every conceivable form. It didn't mean that he would give up and let her lose, but the situation was just not favorable. Rias seemed to read his thoughts because she turned to look at him, her eyes conflicted and a fake smile plastered on her face. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun, but don't worry, I'll figure this out and I'll see you tomorrow. She leant in and placed a chaste kiss on his cheek. Pulling away and walking towards her older sister figure, both Rias and Grafia disappeared to the underworld, leaving Naruto to contemplate everything that's been said and happened after he let Rias in. Well, shit, looks like I won't be sleeping in early after all. Naruto mumbled to himself, mind racing with ideas and theories to help his distressed and shackled friend. He laid on his bed and stared at the ceiling blankly, each idea flashing in his head getting rejected just as instantaneously. Come on, Naruto, think, damn it, what can be done to help Rias with ending this contract? The only way we know so far is either for Rias to win the rating game against Riser or for her father or Risers to annul it themselves. Naruto closed his eyes in thought as he mused about her chances. The odds of the second option happening is outright impossible as both parties are deadest on this marriage happening, meaning that the rating game is her only option. However, the way Rias-chan described it, she has no experience in those events, whereas Riser had participated, won and practically never lost in any of the matches he took part of. That's also without mentioning that Rias doesn't have a full peerage while this Riser has the maximum number of pieces. The odds truly are against her in every way. Naruto concluded, his heart aching for the sweet woman who took him in without truly expecting anything in return. She was a kind soul who came off as sultry and coy but was in actuality a very compassionate woman, definitely not deserving of the fate of a loveless forced marriage. Now it makes sense why she wanted me to join her peerage so badly. Except with this being a permanent process, I just can't join no matter how much I want to help her. I need to find out if this process is reversible. If it is, then I can help Rias from there. Naruto theorized, partially satisfied to finally have a possible solution. Still though, for Rias's sake it should be assumed that the process isn't reversible, which means that I need to decide from now if I can stomach the idea of not being human. Naruto felt the beginning of a migraine as he contemplated the decisions. To say Naruto slept well was like saying that the sky was brown. Such a statement was simple false, certainly untrue, and very much preposterous to even think about. His friend's dilemma kept his thoughts running, even after finally making his choice after much thought. He simply couldn't sleep as his mind replayed the scene from when Rias knocked on his room to when she and that weirdly dressed woman left. There were just too many thoughts going through his head, some which didn't even revolve around his friend but rather on the failure of being able to use summoning jutsu. He couldn't even summon a tadpole. And that's with him using 25% of his reserves. He was eventually able to sleep, but having taught his body to wake up at around sunrise, Naruto felt drowsy as he only caught a measly 5 hours of sleep, definitely not something he wished to get accustomed to. Fortunately he had an easy fix to his drowsy and groggy state. It took around 15 minutes, but exiting the bathroom, Naruto felt refreshed and energized. He headed downstairs to converse with Rias and was promptly disappointed by her lack of presence here. A part of him was expecting it given last night's event, but such knowledge and expectations didn't help in erasing his disappointment at not seeing her. Quickly making breakfast for himself and heading to school right after, Naruto felt uncomfortable as he realized just how attached he'd been to Rias the past few days. Just walking to school alone was a struggle considering he still hasn't memorized the layouts of his destination. You don't realize just how close you get to someone until it's too late. Naruto murmured to himself, a quicksilver image of the Uchiha crest flashing in his mind at the thought. Keeping his head clear, Naruto proved to himself to be competent and capable man as he made it to school all on his own. What followed after was hours of him being tortured in class, leave said class once it ended just to go to another class and endure the same painful process repeatedly until school was finally over. Naruto groaned as he slumped on his desk, laying his head on his arms to get a comfortable sleep. School was finally over, but paying attention to teachers as they droned on and on about history or math or physics was quite challenging, made even more so since he had a headache from creating so many clones earlier to study so he could catch up. He won't be dead last ever again, Datbeo. But despite his new goal and despite the fact that this time around teachers were not trying to sabotage his education, it sure as hell doesn't mean that he'll enjoy studying. No thank you. He stayed there for a while, just enjoying the peace and quiet and the lack of monologue emerging from the demonic and evil teachers here at this academy. As nice as it was to stay, Naruto knew that there was much to do and much to accomplish, so getting up, groaning pitifully as he did so, Naruto walked out of class, waving and smiling back at the occasional girl who smiled and blushed at his general direction. It didn't take long before he was out of school ground, and before the blonde knew it, he was standing just outside of Rias's home, face to face with the door. He raised his hand to knock and hesitated. The implications of his decision once again engulfing his existence and reminding him of a very much likely probability of his choice being permanent. Going through with this meant that he might never be human again, a goal that Naruto worked so hard to prove to the villagers of Konohagakure. Such a decision meant that Naruto would eventually outlive all his friends and the few he considered family. Because I love you, Naruto-kun. Being a devil meant that it might not work out with him and Hinata if he sees her. Naruto stood there for a while, torn between the duty he felt towards his home and doing the right thing. Torn between helping a woman who's shown him so much kindness he's never received or ever would have fathomed, such as simply walking with him to school every day, to even opening her home to him because he had nowhere to go. Rias truly did everything she could to help him even after he refused to join her peerage. Then moving to Hinata, while she didn't provide him with food or clothes or opened her house to him, she did jump in to face a monster of an S-rank shinobi in order to protect him. In her defense, when it comes to providing for him, he just simply didn't need her to survive in Konoha. In a world surrounded by so much pain and hate directed towards him, she was the only one who ever said the words, "I love you," at him. An experience and a moment that many were familiar with, but one that had been deprived from the shinobi. To decide between the two choices after everything that happened, Naruto wouldn't have been able to make up his mind had he not remembered the quivering and glossy eyes he stared into last night. Naruto knocked on the door, patiently waiting for the Gremory heiress to show. She didn't disappoint as she opened the door and welcomed him inside with questioning eyes. "Why did you knock, Naruto-kun? You didn't forget the keys, right?" Rias asked him inquisitively. "No, Rias-chan, I didn't forget my keys," Naruto replied back with a small laugh. "It's a bit awkward to explain, but I felt like I needed to show you some respect and knock on the door." "Oh, I kinda understand but not really," Rias stated a bit confusedly. "It's a bit awkward to explain as I said, but that's not what I want to talk to you about, Rias-chan. Do you have a moment?" "I do, Naruto-kun, as it so happens I also need to talk to you," Rias uttered seriously, grabbing his hand and leading him to the living room. They sat together on the couch. Both of them said nothing, neither of them sure of how exactly they wanted to start this. This is awkward, Naruto thought to himself. He couldn't handle the silence anymore. "Rias-chan, I was thinking. Naruto-kun, I want to." Both of them spoke at the same time. All was silent for a few seconds before the pair laughed softly at the awkward situation. "Rias-chan, please go first, I insist," Naruto said with an amused twinkle in his eyes. "Ah, aren't you a gentleman?" "Thank you, Naruto-kun." She graced him with an amused and beautiful smile. A cheeky grin was her response and Rias had to suppress a giggle at the goofy expression he was making. "I wanted to apologize for last night. It wasn't fair what I was planning to do and I'm really sorry for all of it." Rias looked down, feeling great and immense shame at her actions last night. She felt Naruto place his hand on her shoulder and she looked up, expecting to see a disgusted or a disappointed expression, but was surprised by the look of understanding found on Naruto's face. "We all hurt our friends unintentionally sometimes." Naruto remembered how horrified he felt at the sight of Sakura's injuries by his hand back at Tenchi Bridge. "But that's the thing, it's unintentional," he murmured understandingly to her. "Besides, did you forget that I already forgave you, Rias-chan?" Naruto smiled teasingly at her and Rias couldn't help but laugh, the blonde's word and smile helping elevate the guilt and burden on her shoulder. "Thank you, Naruto-kun. You won't regret the second chance you gave me," she promised determinedly. "I know I won't," he agreed with her wholeheartedly. "Also, do you remember how we talked about my options against Riser last night?" At Naruto's nod she continued, "Well, it's official now. I have a rating game against Riser 10 days away from now and I want you to help train us, please. We could definitely use the help." The moment she finished speaking, Rias felt trepidation as she awaited his answer. "Of course I can and will help. It's the least I can do after everything you did for me, and even then, I always help my friends," Naruto brightly proclaimed, unknowingly helping Rias relax from the stress that just plagued her. "But there is something that we do need to talk about that concerns all of this," Naruto stated seriously, his relaxed and easy-going demeanor fading away as he appraised Rias with the most serious stare he'd ever given her to date. Poor Rias felt her heart beating rapidly as she stared at the suddenly dead serious shinobi. "I thought about this for a long while and it wasn't easy to decide, but in the end I have decided to join your peerage." Rias felt a massive tidal wave of relief, excitement and happiness at the prospect of someone strong like Naruto joining her. Her chances of win, "But I need to know a few things first." "What do you need to know, Naruto-kun?" "I'll try my best to answer all your questions." It was difficult to rein in her excitement, but Rias managed as she spoke professionally to the blonde. "For starters, the turning into the devil part, is it reversible?" "Not to my knowledge, but I know the creator of the evil pieces personally. He's my brother's best friend. I can introduce you to him so you can ask these types of questions, but as far as I know, the process isn't reversible," she stated truthfully. "If it were irreversible and I did decide to join, can I expect to still have my rights and freedom and to do as I please, even if it meant leaving to somewhere far, far away in the future? I can't lie and say that you'll have all the freedom in the world as you do now, but I do promise you that as long as you help me win this match against Riser and as long as whatever you do doesn't create an international incident in the greater supernatural world or doesn't affect the underworld in a negative way, then I won't restrict your freedom like how you may fear I do." Naruto paid attention to every word spoken, eyes tracking her body language in order to try sense any form of deceit that might contradict what she was promising. He found himself satisfied with the lack of evidence that she might plan something. Unlike most devils, Naruto-kun, my clan pride themselves on being very affectionate and caring towards our servants. If anything, you'll have my help in achieving your goals as long as they aren't against the underworld's interest and as long as what you seek to accomplish is something I agree with. That's nice and all, Rias-chan, but I'd like to know not about the Gremory clan or their heiress Rias Gremory, but I want to know about Rias the person. Is she the type to truly think of her servants as her family? Does she see her servants as people very precious to her? Naruto questioned her, all his focus condensed into one single point, the woman in front of him. Naruto's question took her by complete surprise. It took her a few moments, but Rias regained her bearing and answered the blonde's question, her respect and admiration towards the shinobi swelling at his thought process and mentality. Yes, my peerage is my family, and all of them, whether it's Akeno who I've known for years or Asia and Issei who've been a part of my family for less than a month, all of them despite the differences are truly precious to me. Rias stared back into Naruto's stern, unflinching eyes. Her answer brought a smile upon the shinobi's face, his grim and stern bearing returning to his normal relaxed and carefree expression. Well, when you put it like that, I suppose I have no choice but to join your peerage, Rias-chan. She really did try to control herself, but the joy of having Naruto in her peerage just made her lose all sense of control as she squealed in utmost delight and hugged the blonde. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Naruto's eyes softened as he hugged her back. He wasn't entirely sure if he made the right choice in becoming a devil, but it felt right to help someone when they needed it, especially one as kind as Rias. It's no problem, Rias-chan, but you have to know one thing. If this process is irreversible, then I will turn back into being human once we're done with this riser fiasco. Deal. It was tough being stern towards a woman who was hugging you tightly, but Naruto got his point across if the repeated nodding was anything to go by. So how do you turn me into a devil? Naruto asked her curiously. Oh, that's pretty simple, really. Rias let go of him and stood up for the next part. She had him lie down on the couch as she explained the process to him. Every chess set has a total of 16 pieces, 1 king and 1 queen, 2 rooks, 2 bishops and 2 knights. There's also 8 pawns altogether. The king pieces in me, as I am the leader of the peerage. Akeno-chan is my queen and my right hand, so to say. Kiba-kun is my only knight and Koneko-chan is my only rook. Asia-chan also is one of my only bishops, and Issei-kun, his case is a bit special as he took all 8 of my pawn pieces. Now would be a good time to mention this. Unlike in canon, Rias doesn't have Gaspar Vladi in her peerage. She never met him. He doesn't exist in this world. Naruto was dumbfounded at this startling revelation. There was simply no way that Issei was that strong. Issei took all 8 of your chess pieces. How does that work exactly? No offense to Issei, but he isn't exactly strong. Actually, he's pretty weak, no offenses intended again, but what is the worth of pawn pieces compared to the rest? He needed to know the answer to this question. Rias had to stifle a giggle at the blonde's reaction. It was quite amusing really how he felt in regards to Issei. Nonetheless, she indulged him. A queen is worth 9 pawn pieces, a rook is worth 5 pawns, knight is 3, and a bishop is also worth 3 pawn pieces. She remembered the elation she felt when learning just what exactly did Issei possess for a sacred gear. She got really lucky with her choice. Issei is a special case because his sacred gear is one of the Longinus sacred gears. There are only 13 of them in existence, Naruto-kun, and they are so powerful that they're classified as gods' killing weapons. And Issei possesses one of them. Now it made sense why it took Issei all of the pieces in order to be a part of Rias's peerage. Kinda like being a Jinchuriki, huh? Naruto thought to himself. Seemed like he and Issei had more in common than what he thought initially. Yes, he does. I'll tell you more about it later, Naruto-kun. Right now I want to turn you into a devil, then we'll make the most out of these 10 days and become stronger. Even a moron could feel the determination in her voice as she voiced out her words. This right here, Naruto-kun, Rias said, gesturing to the unique-looking piece that materialized on her hand. As a mutated rook, mutated pieces are quite rare and are much stronger compared to the standard pieces that every high-class devil would possess. I only possess one because of my Oni-sama gifted me with his mutated piece. Not that I mind you using such a piece, but why use that specific one if it's that rare? He questioned inquisitively. No doubt there was a reason behind this choice. Well, Naruto-kun, Rias trailed sheepishly. You're too strong for me to use the standard pieces. It's one thing if I'm turning someone weaker than myself into a devil, but that's not the case here. This wouldn't work if not for my brothers, or technically now my mutated rook. Naruto nodded at that. Her explanation was quite logical and reasonable. So how do we do this, Rias-chan? Rias smiled gently at him. Like this. She placed the mutated rook on the center of his chest and started to chant. I, Rias Gremory, do hereby order you Naruto Uzumaki in my name to live as a devil of my house. You shall become my devil and rejoice as my new rook. The abnormal-looking piece atop the shinobi's chest glowed a bright shade of red, not unlike Rias's hair, and sunk into his body. A fact that had Naruto feel and look uncomfortable as he sent a questioning and unsure gaze to the visibly happy red head. I believe in you, Issei-kun. I know you can achieve whatever you put your mind into. Asia cheerfully proclaimed, her faith in her first friend and kinda secret crush being absolute. You do. You really think I can achieve my dreams? Issei asked her excitedly, grasping her shoulders and eagerly waiting for her response. Issei felt like he was one of the luckiest men in the world to have Asia as a friend. The sheer amount of trust that she had in him made him want to become a stronger and better man, something he definitely planned on doing in order to become harem king. Asia brightly smiled at him, her heart beating quickly as the object of her affections was paying so much attention to her. Yosh. Then I definitely won't fail and will become even stronger than even you, Tem. Issei roared enthusiastically. His announcement was met with approval from everyone who smiled at him encouragingly, minus Naruto and Koneko. The shinobi just rolled his eyes and mentally apologized to his teachers for his past behavior before he left on his trip with his godfather, Issei's rumbustious attitude reminding him of his younger, more eccentric self. Koneko on the other hand just ignored him, pretending to not hear the pervert at all. That's the spirit, my dear Issei-kun, work and train very hard for me, okay. Rias fluttered her eyelashes seductively at her only pawn, her voice melodic and soft yet very alluring as she addressed the second weakest member of her group. If possible, Issei seemed even more fired up than before. I will become super strong and one day I shall touch your heavenly Bushu. Akeno bit her lips to stifle the laugh at the awkward smile Rias sent her pawn. Naruto had no reservations as he let out a loud bark of laughter followed by several smaller ones. Kiba too couldn't resist chuckling at the announcement while Asia was appalled yet blushing at his indecent words. Koneko just gave the leader of the perverted trio a dark glare, then looked ahead, intent on just forgetting about his pitiable existence. Cutie pie if you want. Akeno slid up closer to the blonde shinobi, her mouth just an inch away from his ear. She slyly said, her smile widening a touch when she noticed the pink hue on the blonde's face. I'll keep that in mind, Akeno-chan. Naruto mumbled embarrassingly, desperately trying to not think about the audacious woman's offer. Rias narrowed her eyes dangerously at her queen. Akeno, stop harassing my rook, she demanded. Right away everyone stopped walking to look at the blonde and their king, their expression belaying shock at this news. Naruto looked a bit uneasy at their reaction but smiled nonetheless. The first to snap out of it was Akeno, who looked extremely pleased at this. Oh, that's such wonderful news. Akeno voiced out delightedly as she hugged the blonde tightly. That busted everyone out of their shock as they each congratulated him on joining, some more enthusiastically than others as they talked with him. Well, this is certainly not the worst decision I've ever made in my life. Naruto thought to himself as everyone minus his king praised his decision to join them. Part 2 ends here, and now the devil world can no longer ignore Naruto Uzumaki. Riser's pride has been wounded, and retaliation is inevitable. If you enjoyed this part, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Fox Fanfiction. Comment, Part 3 inches if you want to see Naruto clash directly with Riser Phenex.